G'day folks, Nat here from Living Entertainment. And today I want to talk about amplifier bias. Auto bias, that is. Now before I talk about bias, I'm going to talk about what's in front of me here, and it's the PrimaLuna Evo 200 integrated valve amplifier. Now, the reason why I bring up bias is because it's one of the greatest features about this amplifier in front of me here, and it's auto bias. Now, what that means essentially is that you don't have to go and get a screwdriver or something like that and bias the valves. For you that aren't aware, most valve amplifiers on the market have to be adjusted so that your tubes get the most life. With PrimaLuna, they've got a very smart bit of tech inside there that basically reads what the tubes are doing and biases them according to that. What that translates to is a hell of a lot longer tube life than a lot of other tube amplifiers or valve amplifiers. While I'm talking about tube life, it is a thing to consider when you're buying a valve amplifier. It's an ongoing cost. Tubes die, it's a fact. Once again, with that tube auto bias, you're going to get longer life out of your tubes. Now, because of that, it actually makes this PrimaLuna and the PrimaLuna lineup, in fact, a really good value add. You're going to get something like 3,000 hours out of these tubes, which is really cool. Now, on top of that, in here, you'll see we've got the EL34s. Because of that auto biasing, it allows you to change your tubes out. You could put some KD88s, some 120s in here, and you're golden. You don't have to do a single thing. Just pull them out, plonk them in, and you've done some tube rolling. Now, for you that aren't familiar with tube rolling, that just means pulling out the stock tubes and putting in something else. And what that'll do is slightly change the sound of your amplifier. Once again, the cool thing about that is, if you've got a set of speakers, you've put the valve amplifier in, and let's say you want to pull out just that little bit more treble, you can change the tubes, put something else in there, and get it sounded just right. So you're not stuck with just the one sound. Now, do I recommend rolling tubes? No, I don't. The ones in here, the EL34s, they're absolutely beautiful tubes. They're sort of like the industry standard. They sound beautiful in the mid-range, which I think was why, honestly, most people want to buy a valve amplifier, is for that silky smooth vocals, guitars that really pop out of the mix. That's what an EL34 does. However, if you do want a tube roll, you can do that, and the option's there. Now, the back tubes, the EL34s, they're your power tubes. Your front ones here, the 12AU7s, they're your preamp tubes. And you can roll them too. And the beauty of that is they actually account for a vast majority of the sound differences, and they're cheap as chips, readily available. There's literally dozens of different 12AU7s you can try. So if you're going to go into tube rolling, I recommend starting with those front ones. They can make a hell of a difference, and anywhere from sort of $30 onwards, you can get yourself a decent set of 12AU7s. Let's talk about the inevitable. Tubes are going to die. But when they do, PrimaLuna have got something very clever in here. They've actually got a bad tube indicator. So you don't have to worry whether something is going wrong with one of your speakers or anything like that. It's literally going to show up on your amplifier in the front there and glow in front of the tube that's gone. Now, the beauty of that is, moving back to the auto bias, is it's got a very clever bit of tech, and it's going to shut down everything that it needs to protect the circuitry and the rest of your equipment. So when we're talking about valve amplifiers, they've got a bit of mystique about them. People don't quite understand them. If you want to get into valves and you're scared of it, this one here is the most plug and play, safe valve amplifier you can get on the market. It's so easy to use, and it really allows you to just get rolling with this without the fear. So for those of you out there that are thinking about getting into valve amps, this is the one to start with. Now, on top of that automotive grade paint, let's talk about what's inside of this amp. And there is no digital circuitry. Now, some of you might go, oh, why not? It'd be a great feature. Well, this amplifier isn't about features. It's just about sounding the best that it can. And believe it or not, by not having digital to analog converters built into this thing is great. That's only going to add to the noise floor. This amplifier will last you 20, 30 years. Now the reason for that is because your DAC chips aren't going to run out of date. So this piece of equipment could quite literally stay in your system forever. Your DAC chips or your streamers or your CD players, that might change over time, but this is your stable. So it's actually a good thing that this does not have any other circuitry in it than pure analog. Now, talking about circuitry, let's talk about the wiring. This thing is point-to-point, hand-wired. Humans have gotten in there with bits of wire, solder, and done it themselves. They really haven't skimped here at all. The only bit of circuitry you'll see in there is that auto-adaptive bias board, which we've talked about being very important. But as far as all the actual sound circuitry, it's all analog point-to-point. Let's talk about the fit and finish of this amplifier. Well, in my opinion, it's one of the cooler looking amplifiers out there. It doesn't look like a standard one. It's got this nice curved front. And when it comes to the actual finish, this thing's got like 7 coats of automotive paint. I'll get a close up here and you can actually see the beautiful pearl inlay in there. It's just a beautiful looking little unit. Now, if you like your tubes exposed, you can pull off this front bit here and have it sitting out there. Personally, I like it with the lid on. I think it just gives it a bit more shape, but you know, the choice is yours there, and it's easily on and off just like that. Moving on to the volume knob, or for the technically minded out there, the potentiometer. And we've been mentioning this in some of our other videos about the actual tactile feel of the volume knob. This one has a good amount of resistance on it. You can sort of feel as you're moving along. It's really smooth and really well made. It's definitely not a cheap volume control here. Now, the beauty of this one is if you are using the supplied remote, you can actually see it as it's turning around. So it is motorized and gives you a really good indication of where you are at volume wise. We all know once we've all had a few too many drinks, sometimes we don't realize how loud we've got it. You're pretty safe here, it's going to show you. Now, moving across here to the input selector. Now, it's more of a clicker on here, so literally it will click into place. The LED will line up with your selected input. Now, while we're talking about inputs, this thing has really, really quiet inputs. So crossfeed between each one of these is very, very, very minimal. You're not going to get weird sounds coming from one of your other sources going into, say, aux1 from aux2 or something like that. You can be assured that PrimaLuna have done a really good job there. So the big question I imagine most of you are wondering is, what do these amplifiers sound like? Well, I've spoken about this before with valve amplifiers, and in particular PrimaLuna. They have a really strong focus on the mid-range. So things like vocals are buttery smooth, guitars really pop out of the mix. It really focuses in on that. You get more of emotion out of a valve amplifier, in my opinion, than a lot of other solid states. I'm not saying that all solid states are like that, but PrimaLuna really do focus in on that. I personally listen to a lot of Americana folk music, so for me, it's all about the emotion in that music, and PrimaLuna really pushes that forward, and I get the artist intent out of these amplifiers, which is crucial for me when it comes to music. That's what I'm in it for. This amp does it really well. Now, when it comes to treble extension and bass, well, you don't have to worry there, because this amplifier has huge, great big output power transformers. When people talk about bass, they often associate it with the amount of watts that's in an amplifier, but that's simply not true. It is the quality of the output transformers, being able to output a big boost of power when it's needed. So, you know, don't be shy thinking that, you know, this 44 watt amplifier is not going to give you good bass. It is, and it's going to give you beautiful bass. The treble on this amplifier, well, I've found in my experience that it's not always going to be sort of, you know, teetering off or anything like that, which you might expect from a valve amplifier. In fact, it really highlights quite often what the speakers are already doing. So if you've got something showing you a whole lot of detail, this amplifier is going to do that. It's going to show you that. So don't think you're buying something that's sort of veiled. It's definitely not. Some examples of pairings would be the Wharfdale Lintons. I love the sound of these two products paired together. It's got that really strong mid-range. It's super friendly across a whole bunch of genres, and it's just a fun, easygoing listen with the Lintons. Now, if you pair this up with, say, something like the Bowers & Wilkins 603 S2s, it actually images amazingly well out of those speakers. But what I was saying before, because the Bowers have got really good detail retrieval, this amplifier doesn't take any of that away. It just shows you more and more of it. So super versatile. You know, most speakers are going to sound good on this amp. Don't think that it's going to be fussy about pairings. It's not. They sound good across a bunch of different speakers. Now I'm going to lift the amplifier around. Now you'll see me struggle. That's because this thing actually weighs 24 kilos. So you can thank those output transformers and the toroidal power supply transformer for that. This thing really weighs a ton. Now on the back here, we'll start with the speaker binding post. You'll see we've got the negative, a 8 ohm tap and a 4 ohm tap. Now what they're for is basically if you've got a speaker that's a 4 ohm speaker, you can put it in the 4 ohm tap or in the 8 ohm tap if you have an 8 ohm tap, 8 ohm speaker, sorry. Now while I'm talking about that, there is no hard rule there. Plug your speakers into either one and see which one sounds best. That is the best way to test those taps out. It's just it's a preference. Sometimes your 8 ohm speaker will sound better on the 4 ohm tap. So I implore you to give it a go. Moving on, we have the tape out here, followed by the auxiliary 1, 2, 3, and 4 inputs. So plenty of inputs on the back. And lastly, the HT input. Now let me explain that a little bit more. You may have heard me talk about home theatre inputs in the past, but I'm going to go into it in a little bit of depth here again. Now what a home theatre input is for is essentially if you have a home theatre system at home, but you'd like to increase your 2-channel performance, you can run the pre-outs on your front, left and right from your home theatre amplifier into the home theatre inputs here. And what that'll essentially do is turn the PrimaLuna here into a power amp. You can then run your speakers from the PrimaLuna and that will give you a better 2-channel performance. Now, why would you bother doing that? Well, not everyone wants to run 2 sets of speakers and plugging from your home theatre amp into this and then vice versa all the time can be a bit of a pain. So if you've got that one set of speakers and you don't want to buy a second pair, this is a bit of a workaround that allows you to listen to home theatre and 2-channel music and get the best of both worlds. Further along, we have more of those speaker binding posts and obviously the power socket there. Turning around, I've left this till last and it's certainly not least. Let's talk about the headphone jack on the front here. Now this is a 100% tube-based headphone amplifier and it's a really good one at that. So they actually don't have a separate board here for your headphone preamp. It uses the actual valves inside the amplifier. Why spend additional money creating another board to go in there when you can use the really high quality ones in your valve amplifier? So with that being said, you're talking about a state-of-the-art headphone amp here. I've compared it to others all around the $1,000 mark and this one stands up just fine. So if you've got yourself a really nice set of reference grade headphones, don't be shy in using the one built into the PrimaLuna here. That just about covers it for this particular PrimaLuna. Now, if you'd like to know more about one of the other PrimaLuna models, such as the Evo 100 or 300, please write a comment below and maybe we'll do a video for you on that. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the Evo 400 integrated amplifier, we've actually done a video on that and the link is below in the description. Now, if you want to know more about this particular one, feel free to get in touch with us. You can call us, come in store, send us a message. We're here to help, guys. Thanks for watching and bye for now.